Fear is not the enemy, it's the signal. It shows up when you're standing on the edge of something important, something meaningful, something that could change the direction of your life. But instead of using it as a signal to move, most people use it as a reason to stay still. They let fear paralyze them. They listen to that voice that says, what if you fail? What if they laugh at you? What if you're not good enough? And that voice, if left unchecked, becomes louder than your dreams. It becomes louder than your vision. It becomes the soundtrack of hesitation, and you start to live a life of caution instead of a life of courage. You weren't meant to live inside a comfort zone. You weren't designed for safety alone. Growth lives outside the boundaries of the familiar, but you'll never feel fully ready. That's the trick. You won't get a certificate from life saying, you're prepared now, you can begin. The only way to begin is to start while you're uncertain, while you're uncomfortable, while you're afraid. Action doesn't require the absence of fear. It just requires the willingness to move anyway. It takes more energy to avoid your dream than it does to chase it. It drains you to hold yourself back. It eats at you when you know there's something more inside of you, but you keep pushing it away. Fear loves comfort. It thrives in the routine. It feeds on repetition without risk. But action breaks that cycle. Action says, I may be afraid, but I'm going to try anyway. It's not about doing everything all at once. It's about doing one thing, one call, one conversation, one decision, one attempt. And that one action becomes the spark, the beginning of momentum, the trigger that tells your mind, I'm not stuck, I'm moving forward. People don't fail because they tried and lost. They fail because they never tried at all. They sat on the sidelines of their own life, watching others move forward, believing those people had something special they didn't. But the truth is, most journeys don't begin with confidence. They begin with doubt. The people who go the furthest are not the ones who were fearless, but the ones who were willing to feel fear and act in spite of it. That's courage. That's power. That's what separates a dream from a reality. You have to stop overthinking and start doing. Overthinking is a form of fear dressed up as preparation. It makes you feel productive, but it's keeping you parked. It's keeping you from stepping into the arena. Some people spend so much time preparing that they never perform. They polish the plan, but never put it into motion. The truth is, no plan survives the first step. Life will throw surprises. It will test your commitment. But you can't adjust what you never begin. You don't need a perfect start. You need a real one. The hardest part of the journey is not the mountain ahead. It's the decision to begin climbing. That moment where you have to choose to believe in something you can't yet see, to trust that there's something waiting for you on the other side of fear. And once you take that step, something changes. The fear doesn't vanish, but it shrinks. It loses its grip. You start to realize that fear was never the problem. The problem was inaction. Because fear has power only when you give it space. But when you fill that space with movement, with purpose, with bold decisions, fear loses its hold. Everything you want is on the other side of beginning, not finishing, beginning. Because once you begin, you can adjust, adapt, improve. You can find better ways, meet the right people, discover hidden strengths. But none of that happens until you take that first step. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Because fear grows in silence. It multiplies in stillness. But it weakens in the face of action. One move forward is more powerful than 1,000 intentions. One step toward your dream breaks the spell of doubt. You don't need the full picture. You just need to unlock the door. And action is that key. One of the greatest misconceptions people carry is the belief that clarity must come before action. They think they need all the answers laid out, every step calculated, every detail figured out before they can begin. But life doesn't work that way. The truth is, clarity is not the starting point. It's the reward. It's what comes after you move. Motion creates insight. Motion reveals direction. Until you start, all you have are guesses, assumptions, fears, and projections. But the moment you move, you start to see what's real. Waiting for clarity before acting is like standing in front of a fireplace asking for heat before you put in the wood. It just doesn't work that way. Clarity is the result of engagement, not contemplation. You can think about a decision for years and still be unsure. But if you take one small action, even a flawed one, you learn more in that moment than you could in months of planning. Experience teaches faster than theory ever could. Life opens up when you participate, not when you pause. Hesitation feels safe. It feels responsible. You tell yourself you're being cautious, you're preparing, you're thinking it through. But often hesitation is just a disguise for fear. It's fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, fear of losing control. And while you're hesitating, time is passing. Opportunities are slipping away. Other people are moving forward, not because they have perfect plans, but because they chose motion over fear. They chose to learn while doing. Instead of waiting to be certain, you don't need a 10-year plan. You don't even need a 1-year plan. What you need is the courage to take the next right step. That's how clarity shows up. You take a step, you get feedback, you adjust. The path becomes visible not all at once, but one decision at a time. Life responds to action. Doors open not when you stand in front of them and think, but when you knock and turn the handle. Even the wrong door teaches you something. It shows you what's not for you, which brings you closer to what is. Some people are stuck because they're waiting for a perfect moment. They want certainty before they commit. But perfect moments don't exist. Certainty is a myth. The only certainty is the one you create through movement. Once you begin, confidence builds. Once you take action, the fog starts to lift. You discover strengths you didn't know you had. You uncover possibilities you didn't know existed. But none of this happens while you stand still. You don't need to know how it all ends. You only need to begin. You'll never know what you're capable of until you stretch. You'll never know what fits until you try it on. Life rewards the ones who are willing to try, willing to test, willing to explore. Clarity is found in the doing, not in the doubting. It's not found in the safe zone of theory, but in the real world of action and results. If you want to know if something works, do it. If you want to know if an idea is worth your time, test it. If you want to find your path, walk in a direction and pay attention to what happens. The journey to success, fulfillment, and purpose is not paved with hesitation. It's carved out by motion. The ones who grow are not the ones who waited. They're the ones who acted and adjusted. They tried, failed, learned, and tried again. And with each step, they gained clarity. Not because they had all the answers, but because they moved with the intention to discover them. Life is not meant to be figured out in your head. It's meant to be lived, experienced, explored. And the longer you wait for clarity before acting, the further you drift from the very clarity you seek. One of the biggest reasons people delay action is the belief that they need to see the entire path before taking the first step. They want the whole journey laid out. They want a guarantee of success. They want to know what will happen 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now. But life doesn't come with that kind of blueprint. It doesn't hand you a full color map with a highlighted route and a promise of no detours. Life gives you a flashlight in the dark and asks you to take the next step. And with each step, a little more of the path is revealed. The idea that you must have it all figured out before you begin is one of the greatest lies that holds people back. It keeps dreams locked in notebooks and ideas trapped in minds. But the truth is, you don't need to know the whole journey. You don't need to predict every twist and turn. You don't need all the answers. You just need the courage to take the next step in front of you. That's where movement begins. That's where the journey unfolds. Most of the time, people are overwhelmed not by the action they need to take, but by the illusion of how big the entire journey seems. They imagine all the challenges, all the unknowns, all the possible failures, and that mental mountain becomes too tall to climb. But if you break it down and just focus on one simple move, one small turn, everything changes. You can handle one decision. You can handle one phone call. You can handle one application, one meeting, one attempt. Big results are made of small, consistent steps, not giant leaps. You don't get to control every outcome, but you do get to control whether you move forward or stay stuck. And every time you take one small step, you gain something valuable. Sometimes it's progress. Sometimes it's experience. Sometimes it's a new opportunity you couldn't have seen from where you were standing before. The first turn is never final. It's just the beginning of unfolding clarity. It's what activates your momentum, and momentum is the real power behind any transformation. People often look at successful individuals and think they had it all planned out from the beginning, but most of them started with nothing more than an idea and a willingness to begin. They didn't have the resources, the roadmap, or the full vision, but they had enough belief to take the first turn. They had the mindset that said, I'll figure it out along the way. I'll learn, I'll adjust, I'll grow. That mindset opens more doors than perfection ever will. And when you do begin, when you make that initial move, you activate something inside of you. You start to see possibilities you couldn't see before. You build confidence by showing yourself you're willing to act. You don't have to wait until you're confident to begin. Confidence is built through action. The first step is where that process begins. Not after you feel ready, not after every detail is clear. Now, while you're still uncertain, while the future is still unknown, because the future is always unknown, every major journey begins with a decision to move. One turn, one choice, one act of courage. You might not know where it will lead. You might not have a guarantee, but you do have the power to begin. And once you begin, you find out what works. You find out who you really are. You discover your strength, not by thinking about it, but by facing the challenges that come your way. The growth is not in the knowing, it's in the going. And you can't grow from where you're standing still. You have to be willing to say, I may not know what's at the top of the mountain, but I know I can take the first step up the trail. I may not see the end of the road, but I can drive to the next turn. Life meets you at your level of courage. It doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to action. And the sooner you begin, the sooner you'll realize that the map reveals itself to the ones who are willing to walk with trust, not the ones who wait for certainty. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces you can create in your life. But it doesn't come from thought, planning, or even motivation. It comes from action, one step forward, one deliberate move, one decision that says, I may not be where I want to be yet, but I refuse to stay where I am. That single act of motion sets something in motion within you. It starts small, almost unnoticeable, but it grows with every step. And once momentum starts building, everything gets easier. Not because the journey has changed, but because you've changed. Most people underestimate how much momentum matters. They think success is about big moves, sudden changes, massive breakthroughs. But in reality, the people who make it far are the ones who keep going. They create movement. They create rhythm. They know that one disciplined action repeated consistently can change everything. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to move forward with intention and persistence. Because once you start, once the wheels are turning, you become harder to stop. Getting started is the hard part. That's where resistance lies. That's where fear, doubt, and hesitation are loudest. That's where your mind throws all the excuses at you. But once you push past that starting line, the noise begins to fade. When you're standing still, your problems look 10 feet tall. When you move, they shrink. When you act, the weight begins to lift. That's momentum at work. It's not about speed. It's about direction. It's about breaking the stillness and replacing it with steady movement. No matter how slow, momentum is what transforms average into excellence. It's what turns struggle into progress. You might not notice it right away, but every repetition matters. Every early morning you show up, every evening you choose discipline. Every small task done with focus adds to your momentum. It becomes easier to say yes to the right things and no to the distractions. You start building confidence, not because everything is easy, but because you're proving to yourself that you're capable, that you're committed, that you're serious. And the beautiful thing about momentum is that it feeds itself. The more progress you make, the more driven you feel. The more consistent you become, the less effort it takes to stay consistent. It's like pushing a heavy flywheel. The first push takes everything you've got. The second one is still hard, but after enough pushes, it starts spinning on its own. That's when things start happening faster. That's when results start compounding. That's when you feel the shift from forcing yourself to move to being pulled by your own momentum, but you have to protect that momentum. Distractions, excuses, and comfort will try to steal it from you. One missed day turns into two. One skipped decision turns into a new habit of stopping. You have to guard your movement. You have to remember why you started. Momentum is fragile in the beginning, but powerful once it's sustained. Don't let a bad day become a bad pattern. Don't let a moment of doubt undo weeks of progress. The key is to keep going even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it, people look at someone who's winning and they think they must have some secret, some advantage, some talent I don't have. But the truth is usually much simpler. That person created momentum. They kept showing up. They kept moving. They made progress even on the days they didn't feel inspired. And now that momentum is carrying them forward, giving them the strength to face harder challenges, reach higher goals, and push through the resistance that stops most people. Momentum changes how you see yourself. You stop identifying with the old version of you who hesitated, procrastinated, doubted everything. You start seeing yourself as someone who gets things done, someone who moves, someone who finishes. And when your identity shifts, your life begins to follow. Your standards rise, your confidence grows, your results multiply, all because you were willing to take that first uncomfortable step, and then the next one, and then keep going even when the finish line felt far away. Failure has been misunderstood. For too long, people have labeled falling short as failure. They've convinced themselves that missing a goal, making a mistake, or trying and not succeeding is the ultimate loss. But real failure isn't in the attempt. It's in the absence of one. The real loss doesn't come when you try and stumble. The real loss comes when you never try at all. Because trying gives you experience. It gives you growth. It teaches you something. But doing nothing, playing it safe, holding back out of fear, that leaves you with nothing but questions. And questions turn into regret. Regret is heavier than failure. It's a quiet weight that doesn't show up all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, creeping in over the years. You carry it in your thoughts, in your moments of stillness, in those quiet late nights when the world is silent, but your mind isn't. You start wondering, what if I had tried? What if I had taken that risk? What if I had just started? You'll forget the details of your mistakes over time. You'll forget the failures, the stumbles, the wrong turns. But you won't forget the things you never had the courage to begin. There are people walking around today who are still haunted by the opportunities they didn't take, the conversation they avoided, the project they never began, the business idea they buried, the dream they silenced. And what holds them back isn't a lack of ability. It's the belief that failure means shame, that trying and falling is worse than never stepping out at all. But that mindset keeps people in cages of their own making. You weren't designed to live with a lid on your potential. You weren't built to stay small. That burning desire inside of you exists for a reason. It's a signal, a call to grow, to stretch, to attempt something that matters. When you try and fail, at least you walk away with clarity. You know what worked, what didn't, what you can do differently. You gain perspective. You learn resilience. You develop wisdom that can't be learned from watching others or reading books. But when you don't try, when you delay, when you overthink and second guess, you rob yourself of all of that. You sit on the sidelines and become a spectator of your own life. And while you watch others move forward, doubt starts whispering louder. It tells you it's too late. It tells you you're too far behind. But those are lies dressed up as logic. The truth is, most of the things you fear about failure are imagined. People won't laugh at you like you think they will. The consequences aren't as big as your mind makes them. And even if things don't go according to plan, at least you'll know you had the guts to begin. You'll sleep with a clearer conscience. You'll live with a lighter heart. Because deep down, you'll know you're not the kind of person who backs down from the challenge. You're not the kind of person who runs from the mountain. You face it step by step, no matter how steep it looks, and something happens inside you when you act despite your fear. You shift from being controlled by it to mastering it. You stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as training grounds. You start to understand that your life is shaped not by what happens to you, but by what you choose to do with what happens. Taking that first leap builds more than momentum. It builds identity. It tells your mind and your spirit that you're a person who begins. And people who begin eventually find a way. Regret doesn't just come from personal goals either. It shows up in relationships never pursued, apologies never given, truths never spoken. And all of it circles back to fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of discomfort, fear of rejection. But fear is not meant to be obeyed. It's meant to be challenged, because on the other side of fear is peace, growth, freedom. And none of that can be accessed if you let fear keep you in the same spot year after year. With a heart full of dreams and a life full of hesitation, the person who fails forward lives a richer life than the person who never starts. They experience more. They learn more. They grow faster. And they live with fewer regrets, because they know they gave it their all. They didn't wait for the perfect time or perfect plan. They trusted themselves enough to try. And that courage alone puts them ahead of those still standing still thinking, still waiting, still wishing. Regret is the price of hesitation. Trying is the price of growth. You get to choose which one you pay. Time has a way of moving forward whether we're ready or not. Opportunities don't sit still. Doors don't stay open indefinitely. Every dream, every goal, every possibility has a window, and that window doesn't stay wide forever. Yet many people keep putting off the beginning of their journey. They say they'll start tomorrow, next month, next year, when they have more time, more money, more clarity, more support. But life doesn't work like that. Life rewards those who respond to the moment, not those who wait for perfect timing. There's no pause button on potential. The version of you that could be, the stronger, wiser, more fulfilled version, is waiting on the other side of a decision. But the longer you wait to begin, the further you drift from that version. Time isn't just passing, it's shaping you. And the longer you spend not walking your path, the more you start to accept a version of life that's smaller than what you're capable of. You settle into comfort. You adjust to routine. You tell yourself that your dream can wait. But what you don't realize is that your dream is shrinking every time you do. You've been given a limited number of days, a limited amount of energy, a limited space to create, contribute, and grow. And none of it is guaranteed to be there tomorrow. The truth is hard. The journey you're putting off could have been halfway complete by now. The life you say you want to live could be within reach, but you're still sitting at the starting line, hoping for a sign that it's time. The sign is already here. The fact that you're thinking about it, dreaming about it, restless over it, that's the sign. Your desire is your permission. The longing is your reminder. The journey won't wait forever, because you won't be the same forever. As time passes, your energy changes, your responsibilities grow, your opportunities shift. What you can do now may not be possible later. The longer you hesitate, the more chances you lose. Not because you're not worthy, but because seasons change. People come and go. Resources appear and disappear. And if you don't act, someone else will. Someone else will take the shot. Someone else will write the book, launch the idea, claim the opportunity. And you'll be left with the echo of what could have been. It's not about rushing. It's about recognizing that delay has a cost you don't always see until years down the road. You wake up one day and realize you've spent more time thinking than doing, more time planning than moving, more time dreaming than building. And those lost years, you don't get them back. You can't reverse time. You can only move forward from now with urgency and intention and a refusal to waste another moment. People talk about the fear of starting, but there's another fear that doesn't get discussed enough. The fear of looking back one day and realizing you never really lived, that you played it safe, that you kept waiting until everything was lined up, and as a result, you missed your moment. That fear is quiet at first. It whispers. But over time, it grows louder. It shows up in the form of envy, in the form of frustration, in the form of that nagging feeling that you were meant for more, but never went after. There's no greater pain than knowing you were capable of something and never gave it a chance. But there's also no greater power than choosing today as the day you start. Every great life started with a moment of decision, a point where someone chose to begin, even though they were scared, even though they were unsure, even though the outcome wasn't guaranteed. They stepped into the unknown, because staying the same was no longer an option. They were no longer willing to trade their potential for comfort. The world isn't waiting for perfection. It's waiting for your movement. It's waiting for your voice, your ideas, your actions. And when you begin, things start shifting. You meet people you never would have met standing still. You learn things you never could have learned sitting in doubt. You find strength you never thought you had. And suddenly, the journey that once seemed impossible begins to unfold step by step. Not because it got easier, but because you finally chose to begin. The journey is calling. The door is open now. Not when everything is ready, not when all the lights are green, not when all the fear is gone now. Because now is all you have, and every now you waste becomes a never. You don't get to choose how long the door stays open. You only get to choose whether you walk through it. Every second you hesitate, the road becomes a little less clear, the spark a little dimmer, the dream a little further away. Not because the dream moved, but because you did nothing to move toward it. And life doesn't stop moving. It never does. The journey of 1,000 miles begins not with a grand plan, but with a decision to move. Every excuse, every hesitation, every delay only adds weight to the burden of regret. You don't need perfection to start. You need the courage to begin. Fear will always try to convince you to wait, to prepare more, to play safe. But fear was never meant to be your guide. Action is. Clarity will come as you move. Strength will come as you persist. Momentum will build as you show up again and again, even when you feel unsure. And as you walk your path, you'll come to understand that the only journey that's truly impossible is the one you keep postponing, the one you never begin. So step forward. Move with purpose. Trust the process, because your dream isn't waiting for a better version of you. It's waiting for a braver version of you. The one who dares to begin now